Does it seem like you always find yourself with just too much to do? And maybe like myself, you find that just is how your life is. Your life is always so busy and so stressed and even complicated. Well, I'm going to tell you how I changed all that in my life, and so I hope that you'll stick around. Hi, my name is Non-Monogamous Mark, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization called Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. In the non-monogamous lifestyles, a lot of times it seems like people get into even busier lives and more complicated lives. After 27 years of my wife and I having a monogamous relationship, then we decided to open our marriage and become non-monogamous. And when that happened, my life just continued in the same process that it always was. And that was just full of so much to do, just far too much to do, more to do than I possibly ever have time to do it in. But, I just had this great urgency. It all had to be done. And so I'm going to talk about today how I changed all that. And it goes with some videos that I've made in the past, and so I'll be mentioning those videos, and I'll put a link in the description of this video so that you can have access to those videos. And the first video is there's a video I made on complicated lives, and and it really is what I have learned the last couple of years is that our lives, if you have a complicated life, it's because you make your life complicated. And my life was exactly that. And it's no longer like that, though, because I've spent the last couple years uncomplicating my life. That I had to take some time off to focus on completing and getting some of the things done that I had on my plate. And sometimes you just have to take that step back. I was just trying to do too much in not enough time, enough time to do the things that I was trying to get done. And that was the whole pattern of my life. It just seems like my whole life had always been that way. I remember when I bought my RV. This is probably, I'm looking back now, probably about 15 years ago. I bought a 1958 Greyhound bus, 35-foot Greyhound bus that had been converted into a motorhome. It was a beautiful conversion job. It was a wonderful, wonderful RV vehicle. But I knew at the same time that vehicle would require a little more maintenance and a little more tweaking and just to keep it operational. And I purposefully then liked that idea because it would help me, I figured, to slow down my life a little bit. Where I'd take time out to just kind of mess around on the RV, and I'd take time out to go places and do things. And I suppose that it is in part that step in my life that helped me to get on this journey of realizing that I could create a different life than the life that I did create for myself. You see, because all the stress and all the far too many things to do, the busyness, and yes, they're all things that I had a great urgency for that needed to be done in my life. And so all of that was a life that I created, and I had to first. So I guess that's the first thing is step one, is to realize and acknowledge that the life that you have today is the life that you create. We don't want to admit that oftentimes, we just think, well, we're just I didn't create this life. This is not the life that I want. And so, even though I had great success in business and I had made lots of money but through all that, it was through struggle. It was through hard work and long hours. And is that the life that I want to create? When I think to myself, a life where I'm struggling constantly, where I'm stressed out all the time, where I've just got far too much to do and I'm really too busy to really enjoy my life? Is that the life that I want? No, it wasn't for me. Even though, I had success in most people's eyes. They'd look at me and, from the outside, I look good. But I knew that it wasn't the life that I wanted. And yet it was the life that I created. And that's the first thing you have to be willing to acknowledge and become aware is that, yes, you created that life. And if you can create that life, you can unravel that life and really start to create the life that you desire to have. And that's then the journey that I began on. And I suppose 15 years ago when I bought that RV, I wasn't non-monogamous at that point. I was in a monogamous marriage, and there's other videos that I talk about that. And there was just a lot of things about that. My wife and I didn't bring out the best in each other, and so we didn't thrive together as a couple. We just existed. It was like we were great friends and great buddies and roommates and partners, and from the sense of being roommates, and that we didn't fight and argue. But the sex wasn't good. The affection and attraction between us wasn't good. And so again, there's other videos that I made about that, and you can kind of look through the videos that I've made, and you'll hear more about my story. But see, I started to realize when I bought that bus that yes, I can create a different life. And there were some other things going on at that time, and so then that's when a few years later that my wife and I opened our marriage, and I transitioned my life and transforming it to live a non-monogamous life. And now there's no way I can ever imagine myself going back to monogamy ever again. And so then moving forward and creating that non-monogamous life, you see amongst the non-monogamous people in the community in Seattle, where I lived at the time. I'm in Ventura, California right now, and where I live about half the time here and the other half the time in Seattle. And Seattle has a really large non-monogamous community. Non-monogamous be a community of people who are poly, and a community of people who are swingers, and a community of people who have open relationships because they don't want to define it. And so, there's many different shades of non-monogamy. Friends with benefits, and there's also, yes, unethical shades of non-monogamy. It's estimated that about 50% of all marriages, one or both partners have cheated. And so when you combine the 50% of those marriages and about 15 to 20% of people who are living an open relationship or polyamorous relationship or swinger relationship lifestyle, in reality about somewhere around 70% of all couples out there are just fooling themselves saying that they're monogamous because they're really not. And so therefore, through our association, Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, we coined the term ECNM, Ethical and Consensual Non-Monogamous Lifestyles. And then when you think about what the LGBT community did, is that it brought together those people groups, so that together they had a lot stronger voice. And if it wasn't for bringing those groups together under an acronym, LGBT, and now I know it's spread out even further, but LGBT is where it all began. And if it wasn't for the creation of that acronym, then they would have never had the come together under one umbrella to have the strength, so that in the clout, so that to make it so that today that it's acceptable amongst most people in our society to be able to tell them, yes, I am a lesbian, or I'm a gay person, or I'm bisexual, or I'm queer, or I'm a transvestite and transsexual, and it's like okay, people can accept that now. But still, if you are a swinger or a polyamorous, people have a much more difficult time understanding that, because all those other relationship styles of the LGBT community, even if they're not monogamous, they come across as being monogamous. People say, well, then it's okay. Well, but for us that are non-monogamous, people, I'll talk to them about my non-monogamous lifestyle, and it'd be a guy and say, well, you're not gonna hit on my wife, are you? And it's like we're out there trying to hustle everybody, and that's not how it is. And so then there's just this other part of the non-monogamous lifestyle. It's like, oh, that's just creepy, or that's weird, and in reality it's not. When you literally look at the facts, about 70% of the people are either ethically or non-ethically non-monogamous. And so we simply created the acronym ECNM so that we can have an umbrella that will give our community, bring people within our community together and give them more of a voice towards being acceptable within our society. That's what, the other part, BDSM, another community of people. Well, that's acronym for 4 different groups that come together, because oftentimes there's a lot of crossover as well. For instance, in my own ECNM lifestyle, for years I started out as being strictly polyamorous, and then I had some friends with benefits, and then I did some swinging, and now it's kind of like I don't identify with being non-monogamous from the standpoint of being any one of those items, in that I'm a cross section of all of those. And so that's where I think if we identify ourselves with being a person of the ECNM community, that we'll start to pull our voices together, and we'll gain some strength in finding acceptability within society itself. And so in order to do that, though, we have to have lives that when people look at our lives and they say, like, my life that I created used to be, it's like, oh man, he's just always so busy, and he's going here and here, and he's just like, he's got these different women in his life, and I don't want that kind of complication in my life. So what we've got to do is we've got to get our shit together. And sometimes to get our shit together means that we've got to take and step back a little bit. And that's what I've done. And that's my last video where I talked about, 3, 4, 5 months ago, where I said, yes, she's right. I realized that I needed to take a step back because I was just doing too many things and trying to do too many things. And subsequently, 2 results were of that. One, trying to do so many things that I really wasn't able to get a lot done. Not nearly as much as if I just had less on my plate and could just focus on that. I was trying to do some things here with Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. I was trying to do some things with cleaning up old business stuff. I was trying to do things in Seattle with taking care of 2 households, and it was maddening. And so I took a step back, and that's what, my partner, I said that she is right in the last video I made, that, yeah, I took a step back. And then that's what I've been doing, is I've been then clearing my plate of that clutter. And so that I can start to work to truly create the life that I want, instead of just going along and creating a life that I don't want. And so then, as I mentioned a moment ago in this video, that first step is just being aware and acknowledge that you created your life. And then second step is to be intentional about the life that you have in moving forward. And so I stepped back, and I thought about, what is it that I want? And another video that was very helpful to me that I made, and I'll put a link in the comments or the description here for that video as well. And your keywords of your life, and those keywords will help you to keep your life focused a little more. And since then, I've learned another concept as well, and that is the concept of going from peak to peak. And instead of seeing the whole mountain range, going from peak to peak. And I remember years ago, my wife and I, we had started to do some boating in the Puget Sound, and we belonged to a yacht club, and we had a 20-foot boat. We'd go out for weekends and what have you, and it was big enough that it had a cuddy cabin that we could do our own cooking, and we could sleep out there in the cuddy cabin of the boat. And so we joined a yacht club, and we once a month then would try to get out with the monthly yacht club cruise. And after we'd been with them for about 2 years, then the yacht club went on this cruise up into an island up in the San Juans. It was about a 4-hour journey to get there from Seattle, where I was in my boat. And it was a beautiful day, and very nice day on Saturday, cruising up through the Puget Sound and up into the islands, the San Juan Island, and meet the other boaters up there that were all anchored out and just right outside this island. This is a small privately owned island. We had permission there's no buildings or anything on the island, and we had permission by the owners to go onto the island and have ourselves a pig roast, dig a pit on the beach, and create a fire in that pit, and then put a pig on stick and roast that pig. And so we went up. That was the purpose of the cruise, is to do this pig roast and have a good time around doing that. So once we got up there, there wasn't any dock or anything, so we went ahead and we took the biggest boats, and we put them kind of on about 3/4 of the way on each side, so they're not in the center where everything pivots around them, but they're kind of at the ends. And then they sank their anchors down, and so that then everybody else sank their anchors down. It was between them, and so you got this line of boats, and then each of the boats all tied up together. They tied themselves together, and it's called rafting, and we rafted off of each other, and then we just take the little dinghies back and forth to shore. Well, so we're up there enjoying our dinner after we had roasted this pig, and we're all on the island on the beach enjoying our dinner. And one of the teenage girls, she went back to her parents' boat, and she'd been boating with her parents for many years, and so she took the dinghy back to her parents' boat and to feed the cat. And then opening the can of cat food, that the little wave came along and caused her to have some motion that she didn't expect, and she sliced her hand wide open on that can of cat food. And the closest main town to the hospital is Bellingham, Washington, and that was an hour to 2 hours away by a fairly fast boat. And since I had the smallest boat in the yacht club, I was also then tied off at the very end of the flotilla, and so I had the smallest boat, and it was also the fastest boat. And so they come and grab me, Mom and Dad, and they says, "Hey, our daughter's sliced her hand open. We've got to get her into Bellingham." So we did that, and we took her into Bellingham. We were there on the island eating our dinner, and so it's evening time, but it's during the summertime, so it doesn't get dark until between 9 and 10 in Seattle. And so we took off, and we went to the Bellingham, and Mom and Dad and their daughter, they rushed off, got a cab, and rushed off to the hospital. And so my wife and I were just sitting there for hours in our boat, waiting for them to come back, and we watching the sun go down, and then it gets darker and darker. And so then the sun went down, and Mom and daughter and Dad came back. And when they came back, then we said, okay, we radioed out to our flotilla of our yacht club, and they said, well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and shine our spotlights in your direction so you'll be able to see us, and you just kind of make your way to us slowly. And so that's what we were going to do. Well, then as we headed out of Bellingham Bay, we didn't realize that the wind had kicked up, and I have a 20-foot boat, as I said, and the wind had kicked up and the waves had kicked up, so that the waves, we've got 10, 12-foot swells. And that's not something that my size boat just goes through or over, and that's half the size of my boat. And so I'm having to go up and then down. And you don't go straight up and you don't go straight down. Like you do in surfing here in Ventura, you kind of got to go along the sides of the waves as you go up and you go down. You've got to make this pattern along the sides. And so every time you go down the wave, of course you can't see the flotilla down there at all because the wave is higher than my boat. And so you can't see the lights that they're shining at all. And so you get off course. And so you get off course a little bit as you're heading down, and then as you head back up, you get to the top of that wave, and then you look for the searchlights, the beams of lights from the flotilla. And then I could do a course correction, and I could make sure I'm kept heading in that direction. And so I'm at the top of the wave, I do a course correction, looking for that peak of those spotlights, those beams coming off the flotilla of my yacht club. And so then, of course, we head back down into the next wave. And yeah, we were taking water over the top of our boat and everything. It was a scary trip, but we did make it back to the flotilla and the yacht club. The thing is that, yes, we would not have started out. We would have just stayed in Bellingham if we knew what was there in front of us and out there. But by the time we got a half hour out to sea, and then these waves kick up, it took us probably 2.5 hours after that to make it back to the flotilla. But it really didn't serve us to head back into Bellingham, and it just kept moving forward in the direction we wanted to go. And so that's how our life is sometimes, there are ups and there are downs in our life. And when you're in your up time, that's when you want to be looking for that peak that you're looking for. For me, it was the spotlight of those flotillas. And so that's where you look for the peak. When you're at the bottom, no, you're just going to ride things out so that you can turn your life around, turn things around in your life so you can start heading back up again. And so that when you get up, so you can look out for the next peak. And so that's what you want to keep in mind, is just keep looking out for the next peak. And that's how you start to create the life that you want. And you start living the life of your dreams. And so the process along all of this, the journey as well, is that it's about you find your happiness in the journey, not in the destination. And that's what I found, is that it's not, yes, I have that destination where I'm going, but I live every day now by my key words, and that is to have a life that is extraordinary. That's one of my key words. And have a life that is simple, have a life that is fun, and so those key words then are help to guide my life. And every time then I get up on the top of the wave, I look for the peak that I'm headed towards, and I make sure that whatever correction I need to do, I'm constantly doing course corrections. And for me now, with my life these days, I used to spend a lot of time riding the waves down, because my life was hard, and it was not easy, and it wasn't fun. It was just a lot of hard work, and my life is just, I always had too much to do. And so I learned how to then first to recognize that, and second to start unraveling that. If I unravel that, and then I can start to create the life that I truly want. And by creating the life, you created your key words to keep you focused on what you really want of your life. And then you take and be looking for the next peak that you're moving towards. And sometimes then you will end up going down the wave, and then you have to move back up another wave. But you always want to readjust and course correct yourself, so that you keep heading towards the next peak in your life. And so you live your life going towards those peaks, and that then helps you become the person that you need to be, the person that you want to be, in order to have the life that you want to have. When you look at any person that you would say, oh man, if I could just have their life, if I could live in a house like that, if I could have their kind of money, if I could have that kind of family. I watch a program once in a while on TV called The Blue Bloods on a Friday night, and it's about this family. They're all cops, and there are a lot of people are cops in the family, and so they all get together for Sunday night dinners around the table. They got multiple generations all getting around the table. And sometimes, because I don't have a family, and I never really had much of a family, and then sometimes I look at that and oh man, I'd love to have that kind of life, and so those kinds of things, and that just helps me to know that I want to create that family, but it'll be my non-monogamous intentional family, not my family that I'm stuck with by birth. And so we can create these lives that we want, instead of be stuck with the lives that we have. And so for me, in unraveling the life that I had, meant I had to take a step back and just say, well, what is the life that I want? And then start realizing, put together your key words to keep yourself focused and moving in the direction you want. If you'll just take and unravel the life that you have, the life that you got, not the life that you necessarily want. And you start to unravel that life enough so that you can let go of that life. And then you can start to have a clearer path to the life that you want. And so that's what I've been working to do over the last couple of years of my life. But keep the eye on the peak that you're headed towards, so that every time you do ride down those waves and you get back up, when you need to do a little course correction, you can do that course correction. And that's the process then that you go to creating your life. And so for me, yes, it's a life where I have to take a step back and make sure that I'm cleaning things off my plate so I can live a simple and easy life, not a life that's complicated. I can live a life that's full of fun and enjoyment, not a life that's just about hard work. And so you can create that kind of a life as well. And if you want to ask any questions about specifically about needing to have some tips, more tips than what I've given here, then be sure to make a comment down there in the comment section. Also down there in the description, I'll put a link to my my email list where you can get subscribed to my email list, because this next year we've got some really great trainings and things going on with Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association that we want to keep you informed on, and so you'll want to get on that email list. So go ahead and click on that link to get on our email list, and check out some of those other videos that I'll put here in the description that'll help you to create the life that you want, so that you're not just creating a life that is always seeming to have too much to do. Now, I don't care if you have got kids that you have to do, haul around various activities, and you got the grocery shopping and the cooking and all this kind of stuff, that you create the complicated life. You can just as well, when you really say, wait a minute, I don't want all this complication, and you start mentally changing your energy and saying, I want to create an easy life. I want to create a fun life. And you communicate that to the people who are in your life. And you start enlisting them in their partnership and saying, let's all create the life we want. You may not want the same life as I have, and that's fine. But let's work together in helping one another create the lives that we want. And that really is what Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association is about. Because if you're out there in the rat race with other rats, guess what? Likely is you're going to continue being a rat and running the rat race. But if you can get involved in an association with other people who are all creating the life of their dreams, and they themselves are becoming the person of their dreams in that process, when you can be part of an association like that, just give it time. And one of the videos I'll be making is talking more about in the future will be to give it 10 years. 10 years. That's not too much to ask for you to give it of your life. And that's really what I started to realize about my life and the transformations that I've been through, is that by giving it 10 years, you can create the life of your dreams, instead of finding yourself 10 years later and still not having the life that you want. So thanks a lot. Have a really great day.